Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Heather, Evaluation Advisor and Chief of the Capacity Development Section here at the Independent Evaluation Office.
Apologize for the delay and the technical challenges. Hopefully we will have no further issues. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them in. And we will also have time after the presentation is done to go through questions. So we'll start with evaluation plans. What are they? UNDP program and policy units commission decentralized evaluations according to evaluation plans that coincide with program, country programs, and global projects. A timed and costed evaluation plan must accompany each regional and country program document that is submitted to the Executive Board of UNDP for consideration. Basically, it is a plan of the evaluations you will conduct over the CPD program period. So it is to help support course correction, check progress, and to capture results. It is important not to see them as a compliance document, but rather as a tool to ensure and help effective learning and accountability. On the next slide, we will go through the various steps of the evaluation plan development. But first, we wanted to highlight the roles and responsibilities. So it is the program unit senior management that is responsible and leads the development of the evaluation plan, as well for the implementation of the plan. The development is done together with M&E focal points, who often coordinate with program teams and other stakeholders. It is important that the regional evaluation focal points support the teams and help review the draft evaluation plans before they are submitted to program appraisal committee. We also, as you can see, it's also important to include government and partners in the development. So the evaluation plans are then reviewed by Pre and HQ headquarters program appraisal committee. Once they have been finalized and endorsed, they will be added as an annex to the country program document, which are submitted for consideration to the executive board. Prior to the HQ PAC review, it is important that senior management with this slide, we just wanted to highlight the steps of this process from the beginning, when we developed the program unit's evaluation plan, until the monitoring of compliance with the plan, which is, as you know, equally important. Then we come to content. As I mentioned, evaluations included in the plan should be strategic. When deciding what to evaluate, it is important that program units first determine the purpose of the proposed evaluations. Then other factors such as country office priorities, emerging areas of engagement, if there are potential scaling up opportunities, etc., which may influence the relevance and use of evaluations. We evaluate to be accountable, to be transparent, and to inform current and future programming. So it is important to balance the evaluations across the portfolios of the program and projects in the CPD, which leads me to the next slide. So the evaluation coverage should be as inclusive and balanced as possible. For example, if a program unit has a strong focus on and a large portfolio of disaster risk management, then it is important that evaluations reflect this. If revisions are done, and Heather will talk about this more later on, if evaluations are deleted, for example, it is also very important to make sure that it is still reflective of the program. So as I mentioned, it's important that it includes a range of evaluations: outcome, project, thematic, portfolio, etc. We will also go through this on the next. So the examples you can see on the screen now are the mandatory evaluations which need to be included into the plan. There need to be one UNDP evaluation. And you might all know that there is the new UNDP guidance, which is now called United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. According to this, there still needs to be such an evaluation, and it should be part of the UNCT evaluation plan. However, the specific details will be outlined in the forthcoming M&E companion guide. So, but for now, UNDP evaluations should be included. JEF terminal evaluations are required for all medium-sized projects, which are up to 2 million in grant funds, and JEF full-size projects above 2 million. Midterm reviews are also for JEF projects are also required for all full-size projects, so all projects above 2 million. These JEF evaluations should be included in the plan and uploaded to ERC. We are aware that the current JEF guidelines state that this is not mandatory. However, we do state in the UNDP guidelines that they should be, and the new JEF guidance, which will be released later this summer, will also note this. Also note that donor-funded evaluation, final or midterm, commissioned directly by donor agencies, should also be included in the program unit's evaluation plans and uploaded to ERC. It is important to communicate this to the donors so that they are aware that UNDP will publish all the evaluations and that they will be publicly available. Where an evaluation is not planned and has not been included in the plan, it must be revised to include these new evaluations and be reflected in ERC as well. Can you please mute your microphones so that everyone can, well, thank you so much. We also have in the guidelines that projects meeting the following criteria also should be evaluated. So you can see projects that have a planned budget or actual expenditure of over $5 million. Projects with a planned budget or actual expenditure between 3 to 5 million must plan and undertake either a midterm or final evaluation. If they have a duration of more than 5 years, if they are entering a second phase, or development initiatives that are being considered for scaling up. So please note that these requirements stand as of January 2019. So we do not expect you to have this reflected in the evaluation plans prior to this. Country offices may request regional evaluation focal points to waive evaluations if you have reasonable justification for this. If a project is evaluated as part of an outcome portfolio thematic evaluation, then a separate project evaluation might not be necessary. And there are perhaps questions about this, and then we're happy to clarify if there are any. With regard to timing, costs, resources, and sequencing, it is important that they are realistic. So for example, when it comes to costing, we need to consider the requirements, the scope of the evaluation, as well as the budget which is available at the country office. The timing is important so that we avoid bunching evaluations together, for example, during Q4, when we also do annual reporting, etc. And this is just to try to avoid delay or deletion of reports. So please consider the timing, and we'll also show a template which can help you when you do this development of the plan. A new thing that we are requiring is that program units provide a brief rationale of maximum 300 words to explain how the plan represents a balanced coverage of the CPD and how it will help the program unit ensure accountability, transparency, and learning. Please note that this is only for pre and HQ pack review. It should not be part of the final draft evaluation plan, which is submitted to the executive board. Please also consider other factors which may be important when you review. such as, for example, when you develop the plan, So, for example, if there are elections coming up, if there are cultural or religious festivals, rainy seasons, etc., anything that might influence evaluators carrying out the evaluation. So, for example, it might be difficult to conduct evaluation interviews with particular stakeholders at certain times, etc., which might cause delay. So this is another important thing to consider.
So once you have a first draft of an evaluation plan where you've put in all of the elements that Christina has mentioned, it's of course time to review the evaluation plan, first internally within within UNDP, and then with relevant partners. And at this point, once you've put in all of the evaluations you think you want to do that are required, you need to look and see, is the evaluation plan balanced? Does the plan reflect thorough and appropriate levels for accountability, for transparency, and for learning? And we're going to go into just a little bit of information and data that comes out of our ERC, which may help you understand why we're emphasizing the importance of evaluation planning. If we look at the evaluations that are currently planned to be completed this year in 2019, we see that about 80% of the evaluations are project evaluations, and a much smaller number are outcome evaluations or UNDP evaluations, or what is listed as other. And within these project evaluations, quite a large number are JEF evaluations. Another reason that we're emphasizing the importance of balanced evaluative coverage of your CPDs is that we've observed in the past that a large percent of our evaluations are in fact of our JEF projects. For example, in 2018, 82% of our evaluations were project evaluations, and of those evaluations, 43% were JEF evaluations, whereas JEF represents 9% of UNDP project funds and 17% of the total number of projects. So it's our feeling that we have a bit of, in the past, plans have been a bit skewed with very good evaluative coverage in the environment portfolio when these projects have been funded by JEF, and insufficient coverage in other areas of UNDP's work. Christina also mentioned the importance of evaluation plan budgeting. And just to give you an idea of what's been done in the past, this is the average budget by evaluation type from 2018, where you can see that all evaluations average to approximately $31,000, with UNDP and outcome evaluations, not surprisingly, requiring a larger amount of resources, and the project evaluations a bit less. Interestingly, if we look across regions, again, this is the averages from 2018, we do notice a significant difference. Latin America and the Caribbean and Europe and the CIS regions spend less on average per evaluation than do the other regions. Now, once you've put together your evaluation plan and you've sent your CPD and plan for the various PAC processes, at the headquarters level, there is a review process, which Christine is going to explain.
Yes, so basically you can see the two templates that we have included in the guidelines, and it's just to show you what we are using when we review the draft evaluation plans that are part of the packages we get for the HQ PAC review. Basically, we just make sure that the mandatory evaluations are there, that the evaluation plan, all the information that is requested is there, etc. You can see. We also have a separate template, which I mentioned before, that I think is very useful when you do your own development of the plans, just to make sure that there is good planning time-wise. So you can see that you have for each year, and then you can also see if you have, as Heather mentioned, a majority of JEF evaluations, for example. So these are tools that we hope are useful for you to take a look at as well, just to make sure that we include what we need to include. And if you have any questions about the PAC review process or the comments that we provide as part of this PAC process, please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to respond to them afterwards as well. Thank you.
And then once your CPD and its accompanying evaluation plan have been approved by the executive board, the program unit should upload the plan to the ERC within 2 months. It's usually the M&E specialist or focal point in the country office or program unit who has login credentials for the ERC that uploads the plan. And then this is generally the person that will be making the changes to the plan and obtaining approvals for changes to the plan through the ERC. So once you log into the ERC, if you've never uploaded an evaluation plan before, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen the ERC user guide, which you can download, and then you can follow the steps to upload your evaluation plan. And we will be doing another webinar later on this year on the ERC and its functions. So then you have an approved plan, you have an approved CPD, you begin implementing your CPD, you begin implementing your evaluation plan as well. And it is inevitable in the course of implementation that there will be adjustments that need to be made to this plan. However, we've noticed in the past that there's quite a large number of changes that have been made to these various evaluation plans. And this table shows you by region the number of evaluations that were planned as of the 16th of July 2018. So this is last year. We went into the system in mid-July, and these were the numbers of evaluations that were planned to be carried out during the year. And at that point, the number was 504 evaluations for UNDP as a whole. We then looked at how many evaluations were planned for 2018 as logged in the system on the 31st of January 2019. And as you can see, this number has gone down for all regions. So for UNDP as a whole, we've gone from 500 to 336. Then interestingly, if we look at how many evaluations had actually been completed by that same date of 31st January, we can see that for UNDP as a whole, that was only 283 evaluations. So if we look at the plan, the actual evaluations completed versus our plans mid-year for UNDP as a whole, only 56% of the originally planned evaluations were carried out in 2018. This is one of the reasons the new guidelines emphasize the importance of the evaluation plan to the extent that they do, is we feel that we really do need to strengthen our planning for evaluations as well as our implementation. So there is obviously a need to oversee the implementation of the evaluation plan. And what the guidelines recommend is that there be an annual review of the plan. And we suggest that this be done in February, March, the beginning of the year, to review your commitments for this year, review this with your senior management, and determine whether or not this is still appropriate for the rest of the year. Then you can make adjustments, and we'll come a little bit back to the process of making adjustments. We also suggest that now we do a formal midterm review of the evaluation plan. This could be done at some point when you're doing another review. For example, if you do a review of your CPD partway through with your partners, to check and see that with the changes that have happened, with the changes to your actual CPD that may have come about for various reasons, is your plan still balanced? Have you been moving things around in such a way that even though there are maybe changes, you still have evaluative coverage of all areas of the UNDP program? Are your evaluation completion dates realistic based on how the implementation of your CPD has been going through to this midpoint? Are there new evaluations that need to be included in the plan? For example, a project that may not have been clearly envisaged at the time of the CPD formulation has come about and meets some of the thresholds and therefore needs an evaluation. And this is also a good time to check and see that management responses to evaluations and the key actions to implement those responses are up to date. Now, in terms of making changes to the evaluation plan, there are many changes that to a plan that are justified. And therefore, when you submit your changes in the ERC, you need to indicate why you are proposing this change. And we've pulled up just some examples. These are real examples from the ERC. On the left hand are pretty valid reasons. Just as an example, in one case, the evaluation concerned a project in a conflict-affected zone and contained sensitive information which might have harmed local stakeholders or even the country office. Therefore, the report and its TOR are being removed from the ERC in accordance with a note to the file approved by the resident representative. Now, we hope that this is quite an exceptional case, but we do understand that sometimes there are situations like this. Another reason to change, removed due to duplication of evaluation number 6. Sometimes in the very beginning, when we're putting together a plan, we might not get it quite right, or we might find out that a project is actually going to be covered by an outcome evaluation, as Christina mentioned, and so there would be duplication, and so an evaluation is removed. Another case, the project was discontinued in 2016, and it strongly believed that an evaluation of the project at this stage will not add much value. And another example, the date for the final evaluation to be changed to December 2021, as the project is to be closed then, as indicated in the project document. The evaluation will instead be included in the evaluation plan of the next country program cycle. Now, this may well happen, particularly if a project takes a little bit longer to get underway in a new country program period than you anticipated, so it's likely to be closing in the next country program period. However, on the right-hand side, just a couple of indications of insufficient justifications. We cannot just say the evaluation has been canceled. You need to explain why in order for your regional focal point to approve it. Or there is no longer need for this evaluation is not a very convincing explanation either. So that brings us to the end of the formal presentation. And so now we'd like to open up for questions and any points you would like to discuss further. Okay, so we need to catch up on your questions here. So just a second.
Buen día. Gracias.
Yes, so we have received a question here from Fatima. Hi, Christina, just to clarify further, is it mandatory to follow the QA criteria tools, i.e. templates and checklists, before the CPD evaluation plans may go to the PACs? Or are these templates more to support the process? Do we also need to submit them somewhere to make sure that we have followed it? So no, the reason why we included it is only to help showcase how we are reviewing the plans. And if you want to use them, it's just for you as a tool to help support the process. But you are not mandatory. They are not mandatory to be used, and you do not need to share them with anyone. But basically, what we look at when we follow these templates is just to make sure that everything that should be in the plan is there. Thank you.
If anybody else has any questions, if you want to send them in via the chat. No other questions? We'll give you a minute in case you're typing.
Or if you prefer to read your question, you can also do so.
Yeah.
Yes.
People can speak.
Yes. Now. So if you have muted your microphones and you wish to ask a question, please unmute and then go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We also submit annual evaluation plans because our portfolio is very dynamic and there are many pipeline projects every year that were not part of the CPD annex. To give an example, every year 8 or 9 new projects enter our portfolio and most of them require an evaluation and they don't appear as an annex to CPD. So we can start with 10 evaluations at the beginning, but we end up with 20 in the following year and it doesn't appear in the CPD. What do we do? Do we revise it every year according to new projects entering our system.
To revise it in the ERC. What you need to do is revise it each year in the ERC, but there is no need for a formal submission of a new evaluation plan. It's managed through the ERC.
Okay, so I submit it as they come along, as they're approved.
Exactly, and that's why we're suggesting this annual review, because it's a good time to take stock, look back, check, oh yes, so we have these 7 or 8 new projects this year that we need to add into the plan.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I have another question. Most of the new evaluations are due to EU projects. EU, no matter what the budget of the project is, requires an evaluation for every project. But since they dedicate a smaller percentage of the total budget, sometimes it's not up to those averages you described. Like for projects you described like $20,000 on average, whereas we sometimes get very little budget for the evaluation and it affects quality. What can we do about that?
Yeah, I think it might be good to have a conversation with the donor and say that we understand that this is the budget you are proposing, but if you can explain why it might be beneficial for them to increase the budget a little bit, for example, certain, if you don't think that the scope will be covered sufficiently or it will influence the quality, if it's not possible for them to increase the budget, then could it be possible for the country office to budget, or otherwise I think it just it is what it is. It's beyond our control.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I mean, it's the same with, for instance, we have a project going on for 6 years now, and according to our rules, if it's more than 5 years, we have to have an evaluation, but I'm not sure whether the donor would be willing to dedicate this money for the evaluation. It might have to come from our own resources, which is a bit problematic.
So,
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more questions in the chat here. Let's see, from Maria Victoria, we have one question. We have to update our evaluation plans and include those projects over $5 million US. As Christina explained, that requirement goes into effect from January 2019. So you are not required to retroactively add those to your evaluation plan. However, we do strongly recommend that you consider it, because it's our feeling that if you have a project that's more than $5 million, it might be appropriate for both an accountability and learning perspectives to do an evaluation. But the new requirements, the new thresholds, are effective as of the 1st of January. And then we have a similar question for joint programs with donor cost sharing with mandatory evaluations. The evaluation is conducted and paid for by the other agency. Is it mandatory to include this in the evaluation plan? Yes, it's still mandatory to include this in your evaluation plan because it provides UNDP and its stakeholders with an understanding of the evaluative coverage of the UNDP program. We do realize that there are sometimes challenges, that you may have less control over these evaluations and therefore the quality ratings, but it is evaluative coverage of your program. So that's why it's mandatory to include them.
Also very important, I think, to note that it's a joint evaluation in ERC, because it also helps us track which joint evaluations have been conducted.
And there's another question. Guatemala CPD was extended for 1 year. What do I have to do to extend the evaluation plan? There's no formal, we just extended in the ERC as well? Yes. Just make the changes in the ERC with respect to the extension.
Yes, exactly. There was another question.
I think did we miss one? Oh, yes.
A rationale was required for the evaluation plan when submitting the CPD, and we were later asked to remove. We were later asked to remove it So is it required before and after HQ pack review? That is correct. So we do not want you to include this in the final draft evaluation plan that's submitted for the board, because it's more for our own internal review process to better understand how the thinking was done and how it is strategic, how it is covering the program, basically. So it's for internal review purposes only.
And another reason is that it's quite a different process to change the templates of the CPDs and annexes that go to the board. So there's no space in those templates for this rationale. That's why we've asked for it for the internal appraisal committees, because it facilitates that review. It makes that review easier. We better understand why the things in your plan are the things that are in there. But that's also the reason that it's then asked to be removed for your formal submission. Message. Okay. How do we include JEF evaluations to the evaluation plan after both midterm and final evaluations have already taken place? I think you can just add.
Yes, you can just add them.
Just add
exactly.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and add them in.
And it's very good, as Heather showed, in the ERC there is very good guidance. There is a recording as well as written guidance on how to upload evaluations, etc. to ERC. But if you have any questions, as we mentioned, there will also be a separate webinar on this.
Any more questions?
Maybe good also to mention that with regard to the UNDP evaluations, please only include the budget for UNDP. So you do not need to include the entire planned budget for the evaluation, but UNDP's part only.
Okay, Fatima has a supplement to add into the question from Nelly. Evaluation plan extensions are followed by CPD extensions. At Arbas, with approval from the desk officer and the management, we do extend it on the ERC as well.
Yeah, thank you, Fatima. Is it possible to remove it entirely?
I think this is related to, there's a comment about canceling an evaluation due to security reasons. Is it possible to remove it entirely? It's no longer possible to remove it entirely in the sense that changes to the evaluation plan are being tracked, but you can essentially remove it with approval from your regional focal point from your evaluation plan. And on very specific questions like that, which are perfectly good questions, the best thing to do is to contact your regional focal point and discuss with them the best way to frame the explanation in the ERC.
But these explanations are also perhaps good to mention. They are only for internal. I mean, it's not everyone can see these comments, so that is also important to know.
Exactly.
So it's a safe forum.
Anything else? So we would like to thank you all very much for joining us this morning, this afternoon, or possibly even this evening for some of you. We're really pleased to see that there are so many of you on the line, and we really appreciate your patience with our technological problems at the beginning. Thank you for bearing with us. And yes, we will be posting the presentation.
Hope you're all a member of the Yammer network group.
Exactly.
Post it there.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.